So thank you guys for attending this fireside chat. I promise it will be worth it. Nate is Director of Business Development from Kolibri Games. And I can only say that he's one of the only people in the industry who has the deepest knowledge of monetization and how to really maximize your revenue. So Nate, do you mind telling a little bit more about what you do?
Yeah, that's very generous description of my knowledge. So thank you, and thank you all for attending and joining us today. I appreciate your time as well. As mentioned, I'm the Director of Business Development for Kolibri Games. Kolibri is a relatively new 3-year-old studio based here in Berlin. We have 90 people and 2 games. Our 2 games are Idle Miner Tycoon and Idle Factory Tycoon, which are idle games, and we can go into kind of a little bit more about what that is if you're not familiar. And I handle ad ops as well as our new publishing efforts. Sorry, I'm trying to slow myself down a little bit. I had a lot of coffee right before I got on. So we are now publishing, so if you have an idle game you're thinking about making an idle game, we'd love to talk to you later on.
Cool. And without further ado, I want to present you a short video that Facebook did in collaboration with Kolibri Games about our partnership. That's not the video.
It's a very short video.
It's the shortest video I've ever seen in my life. Here you go. Sound? Okay, we should slow it.
I was talking about ads here.
We can dub it. We can dub it.
Kolibri Games is a game studio based in Berlin. The mission of our company is to make the best idle games possible. So we want to be the #1 player-driven idle games developer in the world.
For us, Audience Network has the highest purchase ROAS compared to the other placements. And right now we're using playable ads, which have a 2 times higher conversion rate in the Audience Network, which in average means lower CPIs for us.
The core of our optimization strategy has always been CPM targets. We had enormous success placing Audience Network at the top of the waterfall with an extremely aggressive CPM price target. And from there, we were able to dictate the rest of our optimization strategy. Our customers can't get enough of rewarded video ads. They love the rewards, and we know from the performance of the ads that they're resonating extremely well with the players. Facebook's Audience Network has been instrumental in growing our revenue and growing our business. Since implementing the Audience Network, we've doubled our revenue, and the CPMs that we get from Facebook are above and beyond all of the other networks.
As a player-centric community, what we do is we want to give our players an awesome social experience, and for that, what's easier than just getting in your Facebook friends? And you can go on expeditions with your friends, where it's like you're all going on a big adventure, and in the end, everybody gets a reward.
The nice thing with idle games is that they're extremely accessible games, but they also monetize pretty well. We want to bring idle to any different type of simulation, strategy. There's a lot of opportunities, and we want to see where we can explore and what resonates the most with players.
It is very convenient to reach new customers using the Facebook Audience Network because the campaign managers can either let Facebook decide where the spend goes to or use the granular reporting to dig deep into the numbers, find the optimization potential, and get the most value out of it.
The Audience Network has been a huge part of our strategy and has actually helped trigger us into developing a deeper ad ops strategy for the whole company and for our future games.
Cool. So yeah, there were a lot of insights in that video, which we're going to cover right now and go deeper into it. And how about we start talking about Kolibri Games as a developer. So how do you guys develop your games?
Sure. So when our company started, it was just a few people, a few students, 4 in a student flat in Karlsruhe, and our initial idea was to do a game that was well beyond what was actually feasible for a small group of 4 students. So we got about 60% of the way through a kind of like hardcore strategy game called Front Yard Wars before terminating the project. Instead we switched, and that was like a waterfall development strategy. Instead we switched to an agile strategy, picking a game that we could make with the fastest to market to get an MVP out as quickly as possible. And began iterating weekly on that game. So what we do is we have game designers working 1 week ahead, usually creating, the systems, the mechanics, thinking through that. Then the artists can get started, so that when the engineers begin working, they can just grab art directly from the game, for the game, and implement it immediately. So that's usually about a week-long process. So the designers are a week ahead. The engineers start working on usually a Tuesday because they're doing code planning on Monday. So code planning Monday, start work on Tuesday, then testing and bug fixing Thursday and Friday. So they're really short windows. But so far that's been successful for both our first and our second title that we released. So Idle Miner first and then Idle Factory.
And are you promoting this model for your future games as well?
Yeah, it's a pretty winning strategy for us. So we think that in general, we don't have any sort of fortune-telling ability. We don't have any crystal balls that let us see if a game is going to work or not work. And as we saw with our first game, where the one we never released, it did not work. We want to eliminate as much risk as possible. We're fairly risk-averse in that sense, so we'll just keep using this strategy and try out new titles. We want to make idle games, so we're lucky that we already have a format with some key learnings that we can apply to our future games. So, our second game grew much faster than the first one, simply because we had some of the early kinks worked out and the basic design. So we'll probably continue to replicate that.
Yeah, cool. And in terms of, when you start releasing your product, at what point do you decide, okay, this is a cool game? Do you look at specific metrics?
The most important metric for us is day one retention. So in Idle Miner Tycoon, we have 75% day one retention. In Idle Factory, it's about the same. The second most important is the star rating. So we're looking to maintain 4.8 stars or better. And the reason that the retention for us is so important is that early on, it's very difficult to have the analytical infrastructure that you need to run complicated and sophisticated tests, at least for us. This takes a lot of effort to get A/B testing and things like that, and to do it right. So if we just optimize towards that first retention number, we give ourselves a greater margin of error to make sure the games are right.
Wow, 75% day one retention is enormous. It's like, I barely hear about it, We talk about Voodoo, requesting 55% day one retention for hyper casual, and everyone thinks, whoa, but 75 is definitely something that's, if you have idle games, you want to work with these guys to learn how to get this number. And in terms of, your monetization strategy, can you tell a little bit about it?
Sure. So we have our game monetizes around 60% with ads and around, of course, 40% with IAPs. It has shifted, so it used to be entirely ads, and then users requested ways to spend money, which was a nice problem. So we implemented that, and we got to 50-50. And then it kind of goes back and forth a little bit based on the advancements we're making in IAP optimization or in ad optimization. For IAP, we have a number of just like soft or hard currency packs, boosts, and the thing that is actually the most helpful are event-based in-app purchases that we sell. So if we run an event, we'll sell like a special package around that event, and that tends to be like 20% of the things that we're selling. On the ad side, we have rewarded video only as the ad unit, and we optimize that with a waterfall calling about 5 or 6 different networks, usually somewhere between 2 to 10 times per network within the waterfall.
Wow. So 2 to 10 times. Do you mind expanding a little bit on, how the waterfall is organized, and how do you look at who to place first? How do you optimize your backfill?
Sure. So obviously from the video, we're a big fan of the Facebook instances that we've placed at the top. So we'll put instances or zones or calls usually at the top that are somewhere north, so more than $80. And those are with fill rates above 2%. So we'll do 3 or 4 of those at the very top, and then we'll fill in the rest of the networks. Some are very, very good at hitting those kind of top line instances, so Facebook, obviously. And towards the end, when we need, say, like backfill networks, other networks fit in really nicely there too. So when a user requests an ad, it's very hard to get $2 users to see $110 or $120 or whatever, super crazy high CPM ads. But it is easier to optimize them closer from $2 to $4. So some networks are good at that.
Yeah, so that's very interesting. The fact that you do so much manual optimizations. When I talk to publishers, I get a lot of the questions about, how much time will monetization take. So do you mind telling us, what the team structure is, and is it what kind of hacks do you use, shortcuts to get you to the right place?
Yeah, so for ad monetization, the key metric that we're focused on is the ARPDU. So that's the average revenue per daily engaged user. So we have around 56% of our users are watching ads. And so of that 56%, we're trying to optimize day to day so that every one of those users is more valuable. And so we have a couple different hacks for this. Our ad ops team is about 3 people all working maybe part-time on the project. And we kind of, we meet 3 times a week, usually in the morning. So that's usually when I start annoyingly pinging all of our reps. I feel bad for the ones that are in different time zones, but usually around 9:30. We have automated alerts set up as well. So we use Telegram. I'm not sure if there's a lot of people who use Telegram here, but you can set these up with Slack as well. And so we use automated alerts that are looking to see if there's a huge change in revenue week over week, if there's a change in ad calls. So we usually know that there's a problem coming if the distribution of ad calls to different networks changes drastically. Usually that means that an instance is broken. So if we have a $40 CPM instance and it breaks and it becomes like a 40-cent CPM instance, that's obviously a bad thing because we're filling everything down quite low at a low CPM. So we have alerts for that. And then we're trying to optimize usually around manually 5 or 6 countries that are really important for us. And then the rest we set into a tier system that we don't change too much during the week. Countries that are important, I think it actually really is by volume of users. So the US is our largest market, but we have other countries that have a huge number of users, and if we can get it right, then there's a big jump. I think an example of this would be like Russia or Brazil. We have a ton of players there. Those are typically not countries that I think get a lot of attention when it comes to ad ops, or at least traditionally when we started, because we were looking at CPMs, and in the end, there's much greater jumps that you can make if you start optimizing where the volume is. I mean, that's no surprise.
Yeah. So, clearly you dedicate time and resource to the whole monetization strategy, but it wasn't the case before, as I understand. Can you tell us, like, when you came to Kolibri Games and started doing all of these optimizations, what was the impact on the revenue?
Sure. So I think like we have the luxury where we have 3 people who can work on this, and we've worked on this for the better part of a year to get right. I think for most gaming companies, particularly small ones, and even some large ones, they don't necessarily have this luxury. So when we started, we were working on a problem, and the problem was that we were trying to figure out how to attribute ad revenue to our UA campaigns. IAPs are easy, but ad revenue was a problem because we needed to do revenue per impression. So we worked closely with another network that was super helpful in order to scale that. And initially, we gave them most of the impressions because it solved a math problem we were having. We figured out a workaround to that math problem, so we kept working with the partner. But then we started experimenting more with auto-optimizing instead of just giving all of our impressions to a single partner. So we went from single partner, auto-optimizing. That shift there was probably a jump of maybe 15% in CPMs. Then we started working with top-line instances. So something like an $80 CPM. So that's another jump of maybe 15% in ad revenue. And after that, we got into the weird structure I described to you earlier of like 60 different line items and going a little crazy, which we might step back from depending on results.
Yeah. Okay. So overall, you have a substantial impact, and given that Kolibri earns tens of thousands of dollars per day, this incremental like 15% here, 15% here actually makes a huge difference for you.
Yeah, it's enormous, and it's great because we can then use that money for other things that we're working on. So we have the ability to start a publishing program. We also partnered actually with there's more stability, of course, but we partnered with a charity that is coincidentally called Kolibri and it gives computers and gaming devices to underprivileged and sick kids. We wouldn't really have the luxury to do that if we weren't making more revenue.
Yeah, no, that's super valuable, and I guess it will be helpful for a lot of people to think about their monetization, more thoroughly. Yeah. So in terms of how you think about the rewarded video economy, can you tell us a little bit about that? Like, what kind of mentality do you have when it comes to implementing rewarded video?
Sure. I think when implementing rewarded video, it's important to think about the levers in your game and the levers and the ways that you manipulate your players, basically. So we have two levers, right? We have time and we have pay. So we can give people more time so that things happen faster. You can do this by watching videos. They can get paid more for the videos that they're watching, or they can get paid more for in-game things by watching videos. On the other hand, we can make bonuses last longer. That's time working in the other way by watching videos. So just by changing these two things, this is where rewarded video comes in. And I think these work very, very well as opposed to something that we've had poor experiences with, which is giving people premium currency for watching videos, which in general doesn't seem to move the needle much. Players will maybe watch one of these videos, but they're not watching them over and over again. On average, our players are watching like 8 videos per session. So if a session is 15 minutes long, watching 8 videos, it's like nearly a third of their time, which is a long time to be watching videos, and it has to be from those high performance locations.
Yeah, so 8 videos per session, that sounds insane for some people. So do you see any impact? I guess you were testing all of this setup, right? So do you see any impact on retention or on paying users?
Yeah, so we make sure that all the paying users still have access to videos. We have not seen any impact on retention between releasing with videos and not having videos, which is cool. And we also log all of the complaints, questions, comments, etc. that our users are submitting, and a good maybe 10% of them are ad-related, and they're usually split between a bug or they just want more ads because they like the rewards. So if you're from, maybe a place where there's not a high fill, this is what they complain about. But in general, that's good feedback, right? Nobody's complaining that we're forcing ads on them, and that's how we want to keep it, to keep that star rating up.
Yeah, so I guess some guy in Siberia without internet would be saying, "Why am I only seeing 8 ads? I want to see 10, right?" Yeah. So that's really cool feedback, and you know, it's generally considered that, you know, I talk a lot to the audience. I talk a lot to the people who start monetizing, and that's the fear they have, that it will hurt retention. But I'm glad that, you know, Kolibri is openly saying that it doesn't, and the LTV only grows because, you know, it's incremental revenue to the IP economy. Cool. In terms of, you know, the products that you use like from Facebook, you've mentioned in the video that you use user acquisition, and there was also a social feature that you use.
Yeah.
Yeah, can you tell us a little bit more about it?
Sure. So we do use user acquisition. So we have really high return on ad spend with Facebook. But in terms of the other features, we have a social feature within our games. So we have like a way to go on expeditions with your friends, so you can earn more revenue, and you get rewards and power-ups and things like that. And what's cool is you can see how far your friends have also progressed within the game. So you can see on a particular mine, if you remember the mine shafts, how far down somebody is, what mine island they're on. So we use Facebook for that, but also for the expeditions. So you can team up with a friend, and the more team members you have, the more Facebook friends you have connected through there, the more rewards you get and faster. So we use the feature there.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think that's quite innovative. I don't see it that much, and it's quite fun to see, you know, your friends.
Yeah, we got. So our aim is to be like the #1 player-driven games company, which means that we're trying to steer our game a lot, like the game development, from what the players are asking for. And sometimes they ask for these things that, like, there's no great way to implement this. So one of these was the players were asking for corporations. They want to run a company. They're like, well, we have our own minds. What if we're all in a company? And that's like, there's not a great way to do this. So our compromise was to create these expeditions. So they can still feel like they're part of something, which is important. They can still connect with their friends, which is important. And they get rewards. But we don't have to create this like fictional like game business, or like a mining business in our game, which just make things a little too crazy.
Yeah, cool. And the last question I have for you, unfortunately we are running out of time, yeah, is about, you know, gaming trends in 2019, right? So where do you see the industry is going? How do you see games developing this year? And what are the major themes?
Sure. Obviously, we are super bullish on idle games. We think idle is the future for a number of reasons. I hope it is, since we're making idle games. I think they will continue to be popular. I think that idle games will get more sophisticated. There are some great, some of our competitors make really, really awesome idle games, which I probably shouldn't say. But so, for instance, Eastside Games has a really great idle games that do narrative idle games about TV shows. Tab Titans is an idle game that's based around, it's an idle RPG game. So we'll see more mixes of idle games. But on the other side, you know, for 2019, of course, hyper-casual is going to, I think, continue its run. I think it's going to consolidate into some really, really good publishers that you can probably name off the top of your head. Some really good developers that are getting those contracts with those publishers the majority of the time. And then outside of that, I think we're going to see more PC games continue to port or find their way over to mobile. A great example of this is Command & Conquer, which it's an EA game, released a week ago. It's 4.9 stars. It was editor's choice. It's 112 on strategy, so maybe they need to do more UA, but it's super popular. And I think we'll see that continue. Oh, and the other one I wanted to mention was IP. So I think based on what Fox Next is doing with its new indie fund, we're moving from a time when IP was only accessible for the highest bidding AAA companies to the point where it's more accessible for indies. And I think indies should think harder about doing IP games because there are some good opportunities there, and the IP holders themselves are really eager for innovative content.
Cool. That's really insightful. I hope to see indie games about Spider-Man. coming up. Yeah. I guess in terms of time, shall we have 1 minute for questions? Cool. So does anyone?